welcome back to Itzel Studies. This video is specifically for my experience at UC Berkeley, and I know my experience is very unique. I've never seen any YouTube videos that I could relate to regarding UC Berkeley. I am an ethnic studies major. This is the audience that I'm catering to, but there are still experiences within my, journey that are a little bit more broad, where other folks who might not be in ethnic studies might relate to. Okay, so let's get started with how I got into UC Berkeley and my first semester. And I have my notes right here. I did go to City College of San Francisco, but it did take me like 5 years to transfer from City College of San Francisco. I had a very non-traditional education journey because I'm an undocumented student, and I didn't qualify for financial aid, and because I was an out-of-state student, I didn't have in-state tuition for like 3 years. And there's like a lot of like those things that really impacted my entire educational journey, from going to City College, affording it, transferring, and then even at UC Berkeley. That is very specific to like immigrant students, so I want to be able to go really in depth about that specific issues in a separate video, just because I think it's so valuable and I don't want to just glaze over it in a video like this. But just know that everybody has a different experience, and that was mine, that caused me to stay longer at City College. But you know what, like those extra years served me really well, because not only was I able to really figure out what I wanted to do, but also meet a lot of amazing people, and some of them which I'm still friends with now, and just a lot of amazing teachers along the way that still to this day I keep in touch with them. So everybody's experience is different. Transfer students are fucking amazing. And anyways, so something that I did do at City College is do this program called the TAP program. This program basically sets you up with a counselor at UC Berkeley that meets with you like once a month, I believe. It was a couple months that we met, and we would talk about my goals and kind of why I wanted to go to UC Berkeley. There was like workshops done at UC Berkeley that I went to that talked about the personal statement and the questions. I definitely recommend you checking out those programs at your community college. They really give you a huge boost getting into a university. And yeah, so I applied in 2017, like the fall, and I was accepted in May 2018. And I was accepted and given admission to spring 2019. Something that is also very unique to me and other students that are here from the Bay Area who go to Berkeley is that we're already here. We already are, very familiar with the area. Transferring to UC Berkeley wasn't as a huge shocker as it is for like other folks coming in from, other areas of the state or even out of state or out of the country. The transition was pretty easy in that sense. But I think the transition of just, being at a huge university with so many people, I think that in itself was just like one of the big surprises. The orientation that they provide at UC Berkeley was okay. So I was a transfer student and a spring admit, so that made me miss all of the big like traditional like Cal Day, like those kinds of things that I always heard about other friends talk about. I never got that because I was, commuting from San Francisco to Berkeley, so I never stayed out there. And also, like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't eligible for any financial aid, so I made a decision to stay where I was in San Francisco. I didn't move to Berkeley, but the commute was definitely something that was a lot. I don't think I really realized how much the commute was until like now that we're in shelter in place, and how much time I've been able to be at home and not be on BART. My commute was about a 10-minute walk to BART here in the Mission, and then like a 45-minute BART ride from like Mission to downtown Berkeley. And then from downtown Berkeley BART, it takes you about 10 minutes to walk to wherever like you're on campus, depending on where you're at in campus. My classes were scattered all over campus. There's also like buses that take you around like the perimeter of Berkeley that you can also take. So look out your bus routes. They are free. Also, you do get a Berkeley student Clipper card that basically gives you access to free transportation within the East Bay for the AC Transit, which is the buses. You know, that was a huge help for me. Unfortunately, it didn't cover like BART itself, only the bus, so I would take advantage of the bus whenever I could. My first semester at Berkeley, oh man, I took 3 classes this first semester. You have to have at least 13 units each semester to be considered a full-time student. But since it was my first semester, they didn't say anything about it. The 3 classes that I took were my major classes. Thankfully, I was done with all of my general education at City College of San Francisco. And for those transfer students, you know how hard it is to pass all your general education. Thankfully, my whole like 2 years at Berkeley, I was only focusing on my major, which was amazing. The first thing that I was in shock with was the amount of reading. Like, I had to pause for a little bit because I can't even like recollect how much reading I did, particularly my first semester because it was my first time. I was shook. It wasn't just like the amount as in like 3 articles or 4 articles, or it was like the length also. But the good thing about UC Berkeley, and that's really different from community college, is that you have your regular class that meets, you know, once or twice a week, and then you have a discussion class. This discussion class is led by a GSI, which is a graduate student instructor. This class is basically smaller group where you can discuss the readings. Some of the GSIs that I had my first semester were amazing. I was like, how does your brain function? Like, share with me your tools. And others were, you know, like they were just, you know, doing their job, and they could have done a lot better. But, you know, they're hustling, so no shade to them. So basically, like, these classes are meant for students to have, you know, broader discussions, because the size of your classes are often between, like, I think my smallest class was about 40, and my largest class towards the end was about 200 students, like 220. So there's just no way that we would be able to get the same amount of, you know, discussion with our professors and with our classmates as we would, you know, in a smaller group. And so that's the one thing that I did like about Berkeley. The only thing is that, you know, it does add on to your plate. Like, not only do you have to attend this class twice a week, but now you have basically another class for this class. So you meet 3 times a week. Of course, the amount of reading and the amount of work requires you to, you know, be there. Most of the times they do count attendance and participation as well. For me, it was difficult to balance so many classes. Like I said, I only had 3 classes. I say that because not all classes, not all lectures have discussion classes, depending on their size and the amount of times that they meet. But for this semester, I did. So basically, in my head, I'm like, I have to be in class 6 times a week for, you know, 2 hours each time. And I'm working and I'm commuting from San Francisco. So I was, you know, completely booked my first semester. Maybe like 3 weeks when I was like really getting into the rhythm of class. I was feeling it. I was feeling the pressure, you know, I was feeling the differences of like having to commute, having to work, and having to make sure that all my assignments are being turned in. And I don't think grades define you, but I think I was just so committed to, you know, my education, and I had worked so hard to get there that I didn't want to just, you know, like fall off. And so I was trying really hard. You know, it got to me, the pressure got to me, and I couldn't believe it. Also being like a transfer student at a huge school, it just kind of like felt a little bit isolating. Just like, you know, being alone a lot, because during your commute, you know, you're not with anyone. I had a very particular schedule where I'm going class to class, so it's even hard to like, you know, talk to classmates right after class and say, hey, let's grab lunch, because I had to go to work, or I had another meeting to go to, or I had a phone call. So I never really got that ability to interact a lot outside of class with folks. So I think I started feeling it, you know, it all like come down. And so one time I was turning something into my GSI, and you know, I had been a whole day and I was just kind of like feeling it, and my GSI, like when I was turning in my assignment, he was like, "Hey, Tell, like, how are you?" And that was like the first time someone asked me, "How are you?" And you know that meme where like you're trying to hold it in and somebody asks you like, "How are you?" and then you just like start crying. Like, I was literally that meme. I was just I'm even like just thinking about it gets me a little bit like emotional, because you know that was such a emotional time for me. Once he saw that, like, I started crying and I was like, "Oh, I'm fine." He was like, "Oh, do you want to talk for a second?" And everybody was like heading out, so then I just went outside and I kind of like composed myself, and he was like, "Hey, like, what's going on? Is everything okay?" And I was just like, like, it's just been such a hard week and a hard day, and like learning all of this material. It was my class on like abolition and prisons and stuff like that. So I was like, I can't believe, like, you know, our communities are going through this still, and like my work is around that too, and just feeling all the pressures, like learning these things and also like experiencing it and living it, and also like my first semester here, like, I don't know, I was feeling all kinds of ways. And he, you know, he told me that it's very normal to feel that way and look for community, you know, like there's a lot of students out there that are also going through these same issues, who are, you know, struggling with, you know, a lot of systems that oppress us, and that this school will not define who we are, and that we are more than what this school thinks we are. I know, like, especially transfer students can often feel like we're less than because, you know, we transferred in, we didn't get in like right away after high school, but oftentimes, you know, transfer students don't have the same accessibilities as, you know, people who are straight graduating from high school, or, you know, it just takes longer for folks to know what they want in life, and that's completely fine. There's a lot of other things that impact people. So he just told me, you know, that like my feelings were valid, and that I am not alone, and that if I need community, that there are certain spaces on campus for me. And he gave me a couple of names. I was just like, damn, thanks, you know, like, thanks for listening to me during that time. And just him like reaching out like really meant a lot to me. And so I hope that, you know, I can pass on the same learned experiences and kind of like letting folks know that you're not alone when you feel these certain things. Sometimes when we try to like keep those feelings inside and bottle them, like, they're just gonna come back even stronger. And like when someone asks you, "Hey, how are you?" it might come out all at once. So, you know, talk to folks. Even if you're shy, like, just talk to like one person, or talk to a friend or a teacher. Yeah, so that was like my first semester in a big nutshell. One thing that I wish I did my first semester that I didn't know about, there's this thing called Berkeley Connect. Berkeley Connect exists within all of the departments. It is a class that meets like once a week with other people from your department. Basically, it's just a time for you to meet and talk. Literally just like, you just talk about, you know, why you want to do this certain major, learn study tips, just have somebody else to connect with. So 1 unit, pass no pass class. The only requirement is that you attend the class. They also give you food. Hello, free food. Who doesn't want free food every single day? And I did this my second semester because I learned about it, and I honestly wish I would have done it my first semester. It might have, you know, helped me a little bit in the transition in, but my second semester was fine too. My second semester, I don't know what I was thinking, knowing like how hard my first semester was. On top of being an ethnic studies major, I wanted to minor in education. Unfortunately, I couldn't take any education classes my first semester because I had to declare myself a minor, and I had to apply. I had to go through this like whole application process, and I didn't have to do that for ethnic studies because I applied, you know, with that in mind already. So I didn't have to do that for my major, but I did have to do that for the minor. After I did all of that, my second semester was the first time that I was able to take education classes. I got really excited, and I signed up for 6 classes that semester. Please don't ask me how my mental health was that year. I can't. I don't know, I was just really excited that I could take education classes, and also I was like, I only have 2 semesters left after this one, so I have to make the most out of it. Yeah, 17 units total. Basically, when you're an ethnic studies major and an education minor, you need about 180 hours of community service. Yeah, that's a lot of hours. One of them you could overlap. That's what I did. I overlapped one of the field units so that it would count for both my major and my minor. So yeah, so this semester was really difficult because most of these classes, I think all of them actually had a research paper. Because this semester was particularly hard for me in a personal level, like I was just going through a lot that time. At the end of the semester, I had to take an incomplete, which is completely possible for you to do. Basically what it is you don't take the final exam, and you don't do, you know, whatever it is that you're missing, you just don't do it. You do have to have a permission from the professor, and I think you have about 2 semesters for you to not get an F, but if you do, whatever, you know, there's always a way to explain F's, so don't worry about it. But that was just something that I knew I had to finish later on. This semester, like I said, it was particularly hard because that was the most classes that I took. It was not easy. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know what I was thinking. I was also working at this time, and on top of that, I also started working on my student guide over the summer. I was volunteering, taking these classes, working on this student guide. 10 out of 10 do not recommend. I don't know, like I don't know what went over me. I think I was just so like just wanting to do it all, you know. I think there's a huge pressure on students at Berkeley to do the most, and I understand it, you know, like I'm a transfer student, so I want to do the most that I can in these 2 years, but you know, it does take a toll. Like something has to give, and sometimes that's your mental health, sometimes that's your intimate relationships, sometimes that's your, you know, friendships, sometimes that's your social life, like it's your grades, you know, that suffer from this. I mean, everybody's gonna tell you, you know, you can do it if you try. And you can. And I got freaking A's that whole semester. Was I happy? I don't think I was. I was very like robotic. Like, let me just do this. Let me try to get through the next class. Let me try to get through the next meeting. Let me try to get through the next whatever. Freaking BART commute, you know, let me just get home. If there is anything that I learned, is that I don't always have to do it all, and that it's okay. Even if I would have failed, like I would have been graceful on myself because I can't believe that I did all of that, you know. So don't feel bad that you're not like putting in the most work. You know, for some of us, unfortunately, like we gotta hustle and we gotta do what we can, you know, to survive. And for me, like I wasn't getting any financial aid, so you know, I did that to, you know, get some money in so that I could like afford my living situation. I live in San Francisco. It's freaking expensive here. You know, at City College, like I had to pay for however many classes I was taking. And at Berkeley, it doesn't matter how many classes you're taking, the tuition's the same. So I was like, let me just like try to get these classes in. I need to finish, you know, I need to get my degree. And so I think a lot of those things played into my decision for taking that many classes. So I think, like, you know, you just have to really make a decision for yourself of like, what is it that you want to work on? What is it that you want to like prioritize? Like, do you want to meet friends, maybe join classes where you're gonna meet a lot of like-minded individuals who are into the same things you are, and also go to clubs, you know, and do research and all of that, and internships. But it's definitely something that everybody just has to, you know, figure out what it is that they need at the time. Now we move to spring, and y'all know what happened. I don't gotta say it. We are in a pandemic. This was in March when we moved from like in-person instruction to online instruction. I didn't know what the heck was gonna happen. Like, I didn't know how long it was gonna be. Going into my third semester, which was spring 2020, no one was prepared for this. Like, one of my classes was a hybrid class, and this was like before, you know, anything before the pandemic. And this meant that we were meeting once a week in class, and then on Thursdays we would meet video over Zoom. So that class was a little bit easier to transition into full-time in terms of like, we knew how to use Zoom, and we already had a syllabus that kind of was adjusted to online learning. And also the professor did an amazing job at cultivating a wonderful community in that classroom before, you know, going into remote school, which really helped like the whole classroom environment and all of us kind of like already being comfortable with each other. It was a small class. I want to say maybe like 30 students. This was a critical studies and education class, which is one of the core classes that you need in order to become an education minor. So the curriculum was obviously really amazing and it was actually one of my favorite education classes. And I haven't even said this, but on top of this, like right before going into shelter in place, the GSIs were going on strike. We live in the Bay Area and the cost of living is extremely high, and they were demanding, you know, higher salaries, like just better treatment as student instructors, and rightfully so. It was really hard because then we're going on to online, so I'm pretty sure that also like messed up a lot of the organizing that was happening on campus to support that student strike. In my person's class, like that meant that we didn't have any like smaller group discussions within that larger classroom. That was really difficult, and I of course support the student strike 100%. They needed to do what they needed to do regardless, you know, of what was going on. It was just really difficult to continue like the rest of the semester with online learning for classrooms that were not set up to be that way. That semester was actually quite a blur because there was so much going on. Like everybody was like afraid of like the pandemic. People were moving back home. It was just such a difficult time for everyone, I'm sure, especially if you were impacted by COVID in those early stages where no one like knew what was going on. Obviously not the best scenario, right? But they did move forward with having classes be pass no pass. You won't get any like points, so your GPA won't increase or decrease, and a lot of schools across the country were doing this, and so Berkeley followed. I did do well because I feel like I had at least a little bit of a grasp on things prior to the pandemic. I did just pass no pass all my classes because in that moment people were saying that, you know, it's in solidarity with like people who are not doing so well because of the pandemic. A lot of schools aren't even gonna really look at that. They're gonna understand that people were having difficulties in those times. Man, that semester was intense. So now going on to my last semester at Berkeley. Oh my god, this semester, y'all, like I can't imagine what it was like for folks who were dealing with COVID. Either they had it, or any of their relatives had it, any loved ones, any friends, you know, like it's just so hard. And I find it very, very ironic that a lot of the professors, you know, in the beginning of the semester, they were completely understanding of the situation and were telling students, you know, not to worry about grades and to just literally like, you know, do the best that they were able to do, and that they were there to support students. But that did not necessarily translate into the actual classroom. And what I mean by this is that the way that we were tested, assignments that were just really difficult to complete under a pandemic, the standard was not at all lower. Even if the professors say, at least I didn't feel it personally. I'm pretty sure maybe some students at Berkeley felt it with some of their professors, but unfortunately for me in my last semester, that did not happen. I took an education class, I took an African American studies class, and I took a Toni Morrison class. And this Toni Morrison class was honestly the highlight of the semester. If you haven't read any Toni Morrison books, I definitely recommend her. Geez, like her books really like helped me kind of like mentally escape for a minute. My education class kicked my ass. Like that class was really hard. Anyways, whatever. I'm not even gonna talk about it anymore because anyways, so that was like, you know, on the education aspect of it, at least like the academics of it, that was kind of like what my most recent memories of Berkeley is, or Berkeley was to me. I'm pretty sure this video is already longer than I expect it to be, but I just feel like I just had to say all of these things. And lastly, I wanted to share that I am completely done. All my grades were in. I passed all of them, so no one is gonna come and say like, hey, actually, you know, you can't graduate this semester. I'm done. Like, I'm done. So I'm really excited. It's been such a long time, you know, since I've been working at trying to get my bachelor's degree, and the fact that it's over with, it just kind of feels surreal. And I'm still processing a lot. I'm trying to go to grad school, so we're gonna see what that looks like, in a shelter-in-place situation. I hope that, this semester, if you're still a student, you can make the best out of it. And even if you can't, that's okay, because we're not freaking robots. We are complex individuals with different resources. And if you are struggling, please reach out to a classmate, a teacher, and if they don't do anything about it, then talk to the department, talk to your guidance counselor. This last semester really challenged my love for education. I honestly was at a point where I didn't want to apply to graduate school anymore, because I was like, if this is what online school is, imagine at a graduate level. There's just a lot of things to consider, especially for students of color and students who are working class students that can't, take a break from work. And there is just a lot of complex things. So I commend you for wanting to still, keep going. And I hope that some of this experiences kind of like resonate with some of you who also are struggling. That was everything. Thank you all so much for listening this long. I do hope that you like it and subscribe if you want to stay tuned for like more. Hope you all take